This is what bottom up actually is. These are the three planes of the brain aligned to the axes of our body that reflect them. Let's take a look at the corpus callosum first because it's the structure in the brain that divides the right and left side, and it also gives us the experience of right and left, or in cognitive science terms, it's called laterality, the lateral. This laterality has a structure in the brain related to our cerebral spinal fluid that helps us experience balance. They're called ventricles, lateral ventricles, and in brain imaging, they look like fishtails. They look like a whale's tail. So our corpus callosum, which we experience as just doing right and left, is also giving us a sense of balance and harmony to the ground because we are no longer in the water. So here's the third ventricle here. It's a little bit underneath those lateral ventricles, and the third ventricle in our brain has a lot to do with how we experience cerebral spinal fluid. So if you have POTS, if you feel dizzy when you stand up, if you get vertigo, part of that is happening in and through the experience of your third ventricle. Here's the third ventricle as it's related to our auditory pathways, our auditory cortex, and that aligns to this coronal plane, which is the one where we experience interface. It's also the plane where we experience front and back. But do you see how the auditory pathways are underneath this ventricle? So I personally feel like the third ventricle has a lot to do with how we experience vestibulocochlear and just the whole lived experience of balance, literally and metaphorically. And finally, we have the transverse plane, which is the most aligned to our optic cortex, to our eyes. And that has to do with, we walk on 2 feet, we are perpendicular to gravity by nature, so our visual cortex is actually aligned to gravity. And doesn't this view of the brain look a little bit like the Millennium Falcon? So you can imagine that the brain as an air traffic controller is doing a lot to help us orient and land our consciousness and our sentience. This is the framework of neuroaffective somatics. We're contemplating the body as dimensional and as being guided by an inner navigation system, which is the brain itself, not the thoughts we have about it.